Greetings, this is Rabbi Aaron Boxt, back once again with my podcast of the week. I'm going to do something a little differently today, and I'm actually going to quote from or take some ideas from this week's Torah portion, Tazria, Parshat Tazria, to talk a little bit about the message I want to get across today. So, a short story to begin. I was on my way to visit a congregant in the hospital a few days ago. And on my way there was a white car that was in front of me for a while. And the next thing I know, there was a car that was in front of it, a couple of cars ahead, that was getting over into the middle median to turn left into a gas station. And the car that was in front of me, like, turned into their car, and then the other car kept moving forward. So like the car that was in front of me, basically just skimmed up the entire driver's side or passenger side of the car that was in front of it. And so I saw it, and I was thinking, well, maybe I don't need to, because there were other witnesses around. And I didn't really see it 100%, but maybe I needed to keep going. And then I see this gentleman get out of the car that I believe was at fault, and come, flying with his hands up in the air, literally like he was flying, and start yelling at this woman who he hit. And this was an elderly woman. And once I saw that what was going on, I turned around and parked, and then came over because I wanted to make sure that the older woman was okay, and that to sort of look out for her, but also I wanted to be there till the police got there to make sure that she was taken care of. And I thought about the entire time that I was there. All I could think about was this gentleman who I believe was at fault was hitting his car with his hands, and he was aggravated and he was angry, and I'm sure he was not saying nice things about this woman by himself. And I couldn't hear him 100% because I was talking with her, but he was not being nice. And I kept thinking, what is it about people and the way they interact with each other that is it's so hard to be nice to people. It's so hard to just treat people with kindness, treat others with kindness, and to make sure that if a mistake happens, if an accident happens, we don't just fly off the handle and go crazy like this guy seems to be doing. And so what I did is I thought about this week's Torah portion, Tazria, and one of the most important sort of focuses, or one of the things that it's most focused upon in this story, in this parsha, is this idea of Tzara'at, and what does it mean? And Tzara'at is often translated as leprosy, and that's the way it's been translated for years. But in reality, it really isn't leprosy. The theme of this Torah portion is being impure versus being pure. And what does it mean to be ritually unclean, which would be impure, versus ritually clean, which is pure? And looking at all these different sources of what Tzara'at actually means, or what other rabbis in the past have said Tzara'at is supposed to symbolize, it's really about being complete or incomplete, being whole or not whole, being diverse versus being the same. There is an idea that Tzara'at is like a scaly condition. If you're translating it as to leprosy, coming from the Greek lepra, but it's really not leprosy. It's a word of uncertain etymology. It designates a variety of skin ailments and is also applied to unusual changes in the appearance of fabrics and of house walls. And what I want to talk about is, what does it mean when your house or your garments are afflicted with tzara'at? I think it's much more simple. This is what I mean. If you are going out there and living a good life and doing what you should be doing, and treating people with kindness and love and support like you're supposed to be doing, and doing all of the right things, then you will not suffer from Tzara'at. You will not become ritually impure, which would cause a need to be isolated from the rest of your community. On the other hand, if you're going out in the world and you're talking a lot of trash, or talking a lot of smack, and you're treating people with, unfairly, and you're miserable, and uh, uh, you don't live a great life or a good life or a life based on doing what we're supposed to do according to the Torah. You are someone who is suffering from Tzara'at, whether it's physical, spiritual, or mental. You're not in a quote unquote good place. And therefore, your house where you live may become an unclean, unsafe, ritually impure place, because you are bringing that sense of impurity, this sense of um, affect. You're bringing it to your house, and it can get on your clothes too. I remember when I was a chaplain for a fire department, Wyoming City Fire Department outside of Cincinnati, when I was a student at HUC. And I didn't go to many fires just because I wasn't a fireman, but there were a few that I went to. But I remember one specifically, and it was a really bad situation, bad fire. Um, and I remember when I got back to the firehouse before I went home, and I was pulling off my turnout gear, pulling off my fireman's uniform. Felt like I was peeling off all of this bad stuff, all of this gross, ugly stuff, because my outfit, my clothing, my garments had become impure. Um, and when I went home, I was in a totally different place. I was in a totally different state. How many times have you gone home to your house and take off your clothes, and you're like throwing away the bad things of the day? If you had a hard day at work, or you had an argument with people at your work, or when you get in the shower and you rinse yourself off and you clean yourself and you literally feel different. Well, that's kind of like, in my opinion, the difference between being affected by tzara'at, being impure, and being pure, or no longer affected by tzara'at. And in the biblical text, there is a very important process for how a person becomes pure once they've been impure. And the procedure: someone recognizes that you have a skin discoloration, or you're suffering from tzara'at. You go to the priest, and the priest checks you out. If you are tameh, which is impure, then you're tameh. You perform rituals. You dwell outside the camp for a certain amount of time. If you're not tameh, you're just isolated for a week. Isolation was to prevent the spread of ritual contamination, but not to protect public health. But once a person gets better from being tameh, they have been they may have been physically healed, but they were not yet clean. That designation only comes from the purification rituals that the priest provides. Then you clean, you wash, you shave, then you return to the camp, but not necessarily to your tent. Then on the eighth day, after you shave and clean again, you're able to enter your tent. The point is that there is a very distinct a process for the way a person becomes clean after being quote unquote diagnosed with Tzara'at or being diagnosed as ritually impure. And I think that the message I take from that is in our daily lives when we are faced with these situations where we're required to make a decision on how we treat others, we need to take a moment and pause and ask ourselves, do we want to suffer or do we want to not? And I would venture to guess that 99% of the people in the world, maybe less, but would not want to suffer. And therefore, it is up to us to help others and make sure that when we are living our lives, that we are living as purely as we can. And when you make a mistake, recognize it, do what you need to do, and then move forward. I'll be back next week. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and an early Shabbat Shalom.